Hey everybody, it's Pete. Good morning. Hope you're having an awesome week. Beginning part of the week was a little challenging, but yesterday, my gosh, everything just kind of lined up. And ironically, it lined up after a massive day of selling, which actually sets me up for what we're going to discuss today, which, by the way, welcome to today's episode of Stocks for Breakfast. If you find these videos helpful, definitely click down and subscribe. That would mean the world to me. And if you really want to take it to another level, trade live with me for the next 30 days. Get into boot camp. There's a link down below. Absolutely worth the 30 days. We're going to talk about today how the best day trading setups actually happen before the market even opens. So if you're actively trading, and it really doesn't matter if you're making one day trade or if you're making 10-day trades, your activity level really doesn't matter. What does matter is the ease with which your day will unfold, which day trading can be a little stressful. You see what I'm looking like Grizzly Adams right now, is that the better job you set up your trades going into the day, meaning you know what you're looking for before the market opens. I know that sounds out there, right? How do you do that? Especially if you're have a little bit of experience as a trader, as a day trader specifically. You kind of can feel like that first 90 minutes of the day, what many people might call the market open, can be like chaotic. It can be like all over the place. And then you kind of sit back and like, hey, I'm going to wait for it to slow down a little bit. and then I'm going to trade. No, don't do that. You don't want to not be in the market when the volatility, the volume, and the clarity is at its highest. You want to be prepared and say, I know exactly what I'm looking for, especially in the first hour. And here's the thing. If it unfolds, you trade with absolute confidence because it's doing exactly what you expected it to do. If it doesn't unfold exactly the way you wanted it to, guess what you do? I'll tell you what you don't do, which is what a lot of traders do, is they trade anyway. Well, it's not doing what I thought it was going to do, but I love this stock, so I'm going to get in there and get my head beaten. Please stop doing that. You don't need to trade the stocks that don't do what you're supposed to. That's a lot of double negatives. You only want to trade the stocks that you went into the day saying, this is exactly what I'm expecting. And we actually had a question about, two questions actually, is number one is how do I know exactly what to do on the open? It's the most confusing time for me personally. That's what somebody wrote. And the second question is whether or not this is a easy or difficult time to learn how to trade. And I think that's a really good question. And the answer right now, especially if you started trading since March, let's just say you just got traded, you decided you're home from the pandemic and you decided to start trading in March. You have the absolute easiest time I've ever seen in my life to be a trader, ever. The market goes up every day. We have not had a significant pullback since March. And when I say significant pullback, I'm talking about a deep pullback where you're like, oh my gosh, what's going on with the market. We've virtually been going up every day. And again, virtually. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but my point is you're not dealing with it's going down for 5 days and there's a time to pull back or we have these deep pullbacks. We literally right now where the SPY, the S&P 500 ETF, the SPY ETF, a down day right now is when it trades lower for an hour and then recovers and rallies all the way to the high. Yesterday we had selling going into the day on Wednesday. Thursday opened lower, and then we rallied the entire day on Wednesday into Thursday. Thursday rallied the entire day. And a lot of stocks that we've been watching, even some of those that are not perfectly lined up, but clearly a situation that you want to buy, even those stocks are buy only. Like we have some people that want to get cute and be like, well, it's not going up as strongly as it did before, so I'm going to start to put out short sales. And don't do that. Don't do that. The bias behind the entire market, and especially in technology stocks, it's a raging buy. There's no other way to put it. So the point that I'm trying to make, first with the mindset of going into the day, is setting up your day that you are only looking for places to buy. So that's the first part of the setup. There's a difference between having an opinion and having a bias. An opinion is very hard to change. So when you have an opinion, you say, no, it's definitely going higher today, like that kind of thing. And if it's not, you tend to stick to your opinion because you're trying to prove yourself right. A bias is the probability is the market's going to continue to go higher, and I'll look for what I need to see. And if it continues, I'm going to trade it aggressively. If what I want to see does not unfold, then I'm simply going to either trade less, scale into positions, or not even trade at all. So you see, and of course, I'm talking about the market going up, and it's a raging bull market right now, which we're at all-time highs. It's not really a stretch to say that. Today might be the day we actually go down, but it doesn't matter, really. It doesn't matter. You can't focus on the one day it doesn't follow through when the previous 19 it did, which that's some kind of weird thought process that traders that are struggling have, is they focus on the one time it doesn't work and they ignore the 19 it did. And then I got cat hair. My cat was just in here. They tend to focus on the short term it didn't work and not drill deeper into, well, when it did work, why didn't I make more money? Or when it did work, what did I miss? So, and work is relative. Work means that your edge is doing the work and it's following through. So I want to touch briefly on a few stocks and how they set up coming into the day, what my thought process was coming into the day in the context of order flow, in the context of the most recent chart pattern, the most recent price action, and then how that influenced what happened during the day, and then how to ultimately trade it. Because if you're not in the boot camp right now, we just have an amazing community of people that work together. But working together starts with everybody being on the same page of what you're looking at. That's really the most important part. We don't have a lot of, well, I look at that way and I look at that way. I think that our community is committed to looking at order flow and reading the tape. And I think that there's a reason for that. I think it's because it's not mysterious what we do. We never say do this because. We explain why, what the smart money looks like. We explain why something is still happening. And then we explain why we might be looking to place a trade. And then we take it further and we say, based on that, we can be a little bit more aggressive, meaning you get in with a little bit more aggressive size with the intention of holding longer. Or we say, based on that, which is tape reading, we say, you know what, it's a decent to good scenario, and I could see why you would like it, but because of that, I would start to work the order with a little bit smaller shares and then build that position. And that's really that makes the distinction, the difference really between somebody who struggles and somebody who's consistently taking money out of the market, because the second person, the one who's taking money out of the market consistently, is paying attention. And they realize that every single day is not the same, and you have to adjust a little bit when the market, you know, again, I do this because I kind of do, I compare trading to driving. You have to adjust to the road that you're on today. Sometimes it's wide open, sometimes it's stop and go. And that's really one thing that I'm good at teaching and doing, obviously, is helping you understand what kind of day and week and month it is, and then stepping on the gas or stepping on the brake appropriately. And here's really where the most important part of it is. If you learn to pay attention to that, you will save a fortune. You'll save a fortune by understanding which days are tougher and then not actually trading or scaling back dramatically, so that when you get a day like we got yesterday, where virtually most of the stocks that were in our bootcamp watch list were screaming to the upside. It was I'm not going to say funny, but because we were prepared, it's exciting when your plan unfolds. So my point is this: if you didn't throw money away when the market was tough, when the market was challenging, and we're all sitting around talking about coffee or looking at pictures of food at Jerry's restaurant, if you didn't overtrade, when a day like yesterday unfolds, you're actually netting profits instead of just making back, instead of being down here and making the money back, and now you're at zero at the end of the week, instead of being up a few thousand for the week because you traded correctly, meaning you didn't overtrade. So we're going to take a look at just 4 stocks, and I want to show you the different thought processes going into the day. And I'm going to give you basically like a little sneak peek at what I stare at all day. And it really comes down to this. And essentially what we do is, without getting into what we do actually in the game plan, after we have the stock picks that are in the game plan, then this is my screen during the day where I have a weekly, a daily, a 15-minute chart, and this sometimes is the hourly chart where I'm looking at hour by hour. But let's just say the 15-minute chart for this example. And then over here, I have a 5-minute chart, which is where I fine-tune my entries and exits. So we'll take a look at that. So what I want to point out is, first I want to start out in Home Depot, which was one of the better stocks that I was looking at yesterday. When I say better, it actually was near all-time highs, reported good earnings, gapped up, and now has pulled back a couple of days, which you can see here on the daily chart. So this couple of day pullback had me saying, okay, there's a little bit of breathing, a little bit of profit taking. The gap was very close to being filled, and the stock opened lower, and that was exactly what I was looking for. I'm like, okay, so I'm going to look to bid this strong stock at a good price relative to the all-time highs. The stock breathed a little bit. So I was actually salivating yesterday that the strong stock at all-time highs, good earnings, pulled back and opening lower was giving me a great price, because now it expanded the profit potential from a new entry. And I was like, I love this stock today. I just can't wait for it to bottom out and give me a spot and have a beautiful trend day and print money the whole day. And you can see that the stock really, it did nothing the entire day. So that's kind of the point that I want to make, that it's not about being right or wrong. It's about being prepared. And then when you pay attention, those stocks that follow through, you can trade with absolute conviction, because what you expected to happen is happening. And then you're like, okay, I'm just going to manage risk. This didn't do anything. So now I had to shift my game plan into other ideas, where I put some shares on here and it didn't follow through. And I'm like, okay, just set alerts, nothing going on yet, nothing to get worked up about, know what your risk is, and never traded below the low. So I was good with the trade. Then we're going to shift over to a little different scenario, and Square. Now Square also at or near all-time highs, punched through all-time highs, pulled back. So this situation here is very similar to what we just looked at in Home Depot. The Square pullback was probably a little bit more, but I want to focus on yesterday, which is right here. And we actually had what we call an inside day. Now, if you're watching the channel a lot, you know that I'm constantly talking about expansion in volatility to a contraction in volatility. So we get the big green candles followed by some tinier candles, which is a pause. In this particular case, we actually had double inside candlesticks. So yesterday, meaning Wednesday, was a consolidation from the previous day. And that typically sets up expansion. So contraction leads to expansion. So yesterday, going into the day with Square, we said we're looking for a trend day right out of the gate, and we're only looking to be a buyer, obviously near all-time highs. And those are the kind of trades where it sets up that perfectly, that you are now saying, I'm not going to worry about the wiggles and jiggles and get in and out. I'm going to buy confidently and hold to the close unless I see something change. And you can see here on the 15-minute chart, it actually did explode very quickly. We did have two entry signals over here a little bit late in the morning, actually perfect entry signals, and it kind of grinded higher the next day. But whether or not it started faster, it ended up being a big green candle, which is what we expected based on the daily charts. That's my point. My point is we set the day up prior to the day and the market even unfolding, and what kind of expectation we had. And this is actually, and I didn't do this intentionally, but this is actually kind of interesting here, that you can see that it gapped up, pulled back, filled the gap. This momentum to the downside was actually ending in a melted candle, which is very similar to what we had in Home Depot yesterday. And so you can see that on the daily chart, very similar price action. So we'd be looking for that to follow through as well. Another situation heading into the day yesterday, again, setting up the day, is PayPal. Again, another stock that's trading at or near all-time highs, right? And in this case here, PayPal did pull back for 2 days and close near the lows. So going into the day in PayPal, the game plan for the day was, okay, strong stock pulled back near the lows. So that meant yesterday morning, I was looking for PayPal first to open lower, find support at the previous day's low. And if it did, I'd look for an entry signal and then look to trade that stock long. So I'm literally calling the open before the day even starts. And if we zoom out actually a little bit over here on the 15-minute chart, you can see the stock. This is the first 15-minute window, and this is the previous day's low. It literally opened up lower, tested the previous day's low, and found buying immediately, and you got this kind of a day to unfold. So this is not luck. This is being prepared for the day. So the last one we're going to talk about is the SPY yesterday. And as we said, we're at or near all-time highs. So really everything, we're just looking for a buy as long as our tape reading parameters, our tape reading criteria says that we should be looking to be long. And if you're watching the channel, you know that the opening price is one of the most important ones to me, if not the most important one in multiple time frames. You can see that we had this weaker close, open lower. So I'm saying, okay, open lower is still very strong unless I see a reason not to be. I'm going to be looking to buy again right out of the gate. And you can see that right from the very start of the day, there's really nothing but buying going on. And you can take advantage of this the entire day because you had the right mindset going into the day saying strong, lower opening, as long as it meets this criteria, I'm going to start buying again because there's no reason not to. Getting other than maybe in your mind, you're like, oh, maybe it's gone too far. Well, stocks are never too high to buy. It might be challenging the fact that we're never pulling back, but right now we're seeing only buying. Which actually, you know what? I'm going to go back to the chart. I want to point out a trade in a stock that exploded yesterday. There's news on the stock and whatnot, but what I want to point out is, excuse me, it's not. It's FSLY. It's when you determine whether or not a trend is changing. So I'm actually going to expand this chart. To where I'm going to pull up only the 5-minute chart on the bigger window. So this is actually, pretend this is a daily chart in the market, and you see this is what's going on. You're like, oh my gosh, we're getting into the nosebleed seats. So you draw a trend line from the lowest low up through price action, not crossing through anything, and then you determine where that trend line breaks. So you know that something changed. When this breaks, you now draw your line that says, okay, that's where we determine a change of trend. So now you have two levels. You have the high and you have the low, just this number right here and this level right here that tells you that this trend is either valid or the trend changes. So what's interesting is I drew this line about an hour before this, but imagine this is like July 2nd and that's August 2nd. My point is on the daily charts and how to understand when the market changes. This has not changed. It's a potential change of trend. So these pullbacks in the longer term picture validate this move until the line in the sand where the trend broke holds. So that's how you actually end up staying out of trouble. Number one is not trying to get cute and trading in the other direction, which many active traders do. And number two is also trade with confidence because now you have an absolute line in the sand that says, okay, the daily chart or the weekly chart or the monthly chart, whatever time frame you trade on, is still valid. And until I see that change, which is what I just showed you, I'm continuing to look for places to buy. And that's where trading becomes a lot less stressful and quite honestly a lot easier because now you're not guessing anymore. Now you're just looking at the chart and you're saying, well, until I see a reason, I have my bias and I'm just going to continue to look for entries in that direction and manage my risk and my leverage. So I hope that sets up a little bit of clarity that all of the hard part of trading happens before the market even opens, happens before the week even opens. And if you're day trading day to day, that's where the power of looking at the market comes in from the daily charts, making your day trading scenarios a lot easier. Hope that helps. Hope to see you in the boot camp. Subscribe. Have a great day.